Should a marriage license have to be periodically renewed? That's the question this startup founder posed to her audience and presented in this LinkedIn post. And at face value, like this kind of makes sense if you think about it. Like your driver's license, you have to periodically renew. Your car registration, you have to renew regularly. And every 10 years, you have to get a new passport and update it. So from a documentation and a licensing perspective, sure, one could make that argument. Like, yeah, why not? But I think it's a much bigger problem than that. This gives women yet another out in commitment and not being accountable and responsible for their actions. So I want to, before we dive into this post, I want to cover like this woman's company, because she has built a business for herself off of divorce, which I think is very cringe, but you know. Okay, so her name is Erin, and she is the CEO and co-founder of a startup called Hello Divorce. And according to her byline here on LinkedIn, it says she's innovating the divorce experience with technology and empathy. So right off the bat, I have a huge problem with this, and maybe I'm biased. I think I'm far more conservative and traditional when it comes to marriage than I am, other things. But for me, like, divorce really is not an option. It's not on the table. You say I do, like that's the commitment you're making. You're making a lifelong commitment. Divorce is not an option. I think there are, of course, extenuating circumstances where you could make the case for a divorce. And I'll give you one example. If you're not familiar with Jeff Younger, definitely educate yourself on him. This is a man who his ex-wife, I think it was 2018, I want to say, 2016, 2018, started grooming their young children. They had twin boys, started grooming one of their children to believe he was a girl. And so they've been, through the courts since then. He's been trying to get custody of his kids. It looks like this has been going through California. And so this was published in 2024, so just a year ago. But he's been trying to, he's divorced his wife because of this, and he's been trying to get custody of his kids so that she doesn't go through with completely transitioning one of his children. And of course, this is being framed as gender affirming care and all that kind of stuff, when it's very clear like the mom has gone off her rocker. But basically, a court judge in Los Angeles, surprise surprise, granted the wife custody of the kid, and thus the ability to proceed with going through with the gender affirming care. So he posted last year on X his experience, but basically how he lost all parental rights to his sons. He won't be able to see them unless they're supervised, which he's not gonna concede to. And he can show his affection and care for his sons, but his wife probably won't give whatever he sends to him, of course, because he still considers his sons, both of them. He doesn't recognize the one as being a girl. And so this is like one of those rare extenuating circumstances where I'm like, okay, if your husband or your wife is doing something to harm your children, or is doing something to actively harm you, okay, yeah, like there's grounds for divorce. And I know there's harm is kind of a loose definition, but if they're doing something to physically harm you, abusing you, that kind of stuff, okay, like there's a time and place, I think, and people change, right? People change, so I get it. There's a time and place for that. But just because like you wake up on the wrong side of the bed one morning, like, should that be a sufficient reason to get a divorce? And the answer to that is obviously no, but that's been what's happening. So I pulled some stuff up on I wanted like just a brief rundown of divorce in the United States. So I pulled some stuff up on Gemini, and I have to confess, like, for me, I'm not really exposed to divorce, and I'm really grateful for that. My parents are still married. The friends I have who are products of divorce homes, very few, but that was back in the 90s, so obviously a lot has changed. But even my close friends now, like, I can't think of a single one who's gone through divorce. I know people who have been divorced, so I'm not saying like I'm not aware that people do get divorced, obviously, but I just have not been privy to the experience of someone getting a divorce. So things like no fault divorce really like weren't on my radar until, you know, like a year or two ago. And it's just like I'm just, yeah, it's just like not something I had ever thought was a thing. And because I wasn't around divorce, like I just, you know, not really exposed to it. So I went through Gemini and I asked it to just give me a rundown of what like the status of divorce is in the United States. So obviously, since no fault divorce became a thing, you know, it made it easier for folks to get divorced. And so approximately 90% of all divorces in the United States are now filed by no fault divorce. And part of this is because several states have gotten rid of other definitions or qualifiers for divorce. So like they just categorize everything as no fault. So you could be divorcing someone for adultery, for example, but it would still be categorized as no fault divorce in that state. But regardless, the vast majority of no fault divorces are of divorces are no fault divorces, right? So you go down here and I ask, you know, who initiates divorce more often, the husband or the wife? And so women initiate divorce significantly more than men. Statistical data consistently shows that women file for divorce in approximately 69 to 70% of cases. And so this is really interesting to think about. And you jump down here, it says the gap is even wider among college educated women who initiate divorce at a rate of nearly 90%. So basically, the more educated a woman is, the more likely she's going to initiate a divorce. So it's very clear, like, the people benefiting from divorce in this country, and obviously the entire family court system and divorce laws and all that kind of stuff that determines who gets custody and property rights and all that kind of stuff, it favors women. So women are already disproportionately beneficiaries of the divorce system in the United States, but that doesn't stop this woman here from wanting to make the experience even easier for women to divorce their husbands. And her startup, this is, like I said, very cringe. Like this, it kind of looks like a LegalZoom for divorce, but like this shouldn't be, like, it shouldn't be easy to get a divorce. Like, we've just completely devalued like marriage and family formation. We've accepted in our culture that marriage is just a party you throw, and then if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed a couple of years later, you can just get rid of, you know, the relationship and throw everything away. You can just walk away from it. You know, and it's just like we've taken the sanctity out of marriage and the commitment and the responsibility and the duty and the obligation. And I think that's kind of the heart of this. Like, women have been given an out to exit marriages that no longer suit them. And because women are emotional beings, it's very likely that they could wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and do frequently. I'm one of these women. Like, I get it. Like, I have bad days too. You know, you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you're grumpy, and you're like, I'm going to divorce my husband today. And then you go into the female hive mind on social media. So you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, apparently LinkedIn too, and you're surrounded by other women who are affirming what you believe about your world and how you see yourself in your world. And so if you have a culture of like hyper feminist women who are telling you like your husband's doing bad things to you, he's a bad person, he's hurting you, blah blah, and you like start looking for validation of that in your marriage, then yeah, you're gonna like feel confident in ending a relationship rather than working through it, because you're surrounded by people who have made the same decision, right? So there's like a contagion effect here. I think I don't think this is just, you know, women being women. I think women are encouraging and supporting other women and getting divorces too. I think that's a large part of this. And so now we have startup founders who are creating basically the LegalZoom of divorce, and in order to innovate the experience, which I think is malarkey. But anyways, I digress. So let's get back to her original post. So this woman is the co-founder of this company, and she ran a poll asking whether marriage licenses should expire unless actively renewed. So she interviewed 1,000 people, and she jumps down here, by the way, and says that the respondents were overwhelmingly women navigating or recovering from divorce. She says our IG Instagram audience skews that way, but since women file for divorce 70% of the time, it's very telling. No, it's not telling because it tells you how men and women view divorce differently. Women clearly don't see it as a obligation, duty, or responsibility. It's not something they're accountable to. And because, there's the hive mind on social media, they're affirming what they're seeing in the world around them. So it's not telling. And so if the vast majority of women are telling you that it should be actively, a marriage license should be actively renewed, like that's not telling, it's not surprising. So she's combined here that the yes and the maybe, that 90% would prefer or at least be open to a renewable marriage license. And she says their feedback wasn't anti-marriage for the most part. Comments received included wanting marriage for the legal protection, for the commitment, for the stability. So they want all the things. They want all like the nice things that come with marriage. They just don't want, forever, the forever aspect of it, especially when the relationship is unhealthy and or unhappy. And like I said, there are extenuating circumstances. Jeff Younger's case is a great example where if your wife is trying to groom and eventually castrate your son and turn him into a girl, like by all means, like divorce. But for the most part, like, yeah, life has its up and downs, right? You're going to have peaks, you're going to have valleys. And like part of the challenge of, being in partnership with another person is you have to navigate those together. And, think about it from a family perspective. Like growing up, right, you had peaks and valleys as a teenager, as a young adult, further on into adulthood. There's periods of time in my life where I've resented my parents. I love my parents. I never want to see them again. I love seeing them, it ebbs and flows. I have never once thought about like going through a legal process to emancipate myself and decouple myself from the family unit I was born into. Like my parents are my parents. They're always going to be my parents. My brothers are my brothers. They're always going to be my brothers. Like that's never going to change despite what they do. If they do things that annoy me, if I disagree with them. And we live in a culture too, by the way, where it's actively encouraged to uncouple yourself from your family. Like you have leftists all the time who are going on to, MSNBC or whatever it's called now. And, CNN and any of these therapists who are like, okay, if your family doesn't agree with you politically, if they voted for Trump, it's fine. You can skip Thanksgiving dinner. You can estrange yourself from your family. It's okay. Like we live in that culture now where even that is permissible. And so, you're part of units, right? You're not just a singular person. You're part of different units, a family unit. If you get married, then you're starting your own, a family unit of your own. But the whole point of the family unit is that it is a commitment, that it is forever, that there is an obligation, that you're accountable to other people besides yourself. And so if you want an out just because you feel like the marriage or the relationship leaves you unhappy, like that's just a cop-out. And just a short tangent, but I think the whole concept of happiness is just insane. I think it's just a marketing ploy to get us to buy things we don't need to make us feel fulfilled. Like we have created a myth that we're supposed to strive to achieve happiness, but the thing is happiness is never achievable. It's always something that you're going to have to get more of in order to get closer to it, right? It's fleeting. It's ephemeral. It's not something that's a fixture. So you might think, okay, well, losing weight will make me happy, or having this type of car will make me happy, or having this type of house will make me happy, or making this much money will make me happy. Well, then for a period of time, it might, but then eventually that will wane. So it'll be like, okay, well, this house made me happy, but now I need a bigger house. Or, okay, having this much money in my bank account, that made me happy, but now it's not enough. I need more. You always need more. It's never enough because happiness can never provide the feeling of enoughness. What can is finding contentment and gratitude with what you already have. And I think if people just did that more often and they reflected on the good they have rather than the deficits, they would find that they are quote unquote, happy most of the time. And then they wouldn't feel like there's a need to upend the lives of not only themselves, but their loved ones too. They wouldn't walk away from marriages if they found contentment and gratitude. For their husbands, for their children, for their homes and the things they have, not aspiring to have the things that, a bunch of feminist hive minders on social media are telling them that they think they should have. So that's a short digression, but I think the whole happiness thing is a bunch of gobbledygook. Okay, so she says here, the message based on the survey was clear. People want relationships to be a choice, not an obligation. No, that's not the point. The point of a relationship is that it is an obligation and there is duty, there is responsibility. And so she says a renewal model forces the questions most couples avoid. Are we still connected? Are we still kind? Have we grown apart? Do we want to reconnect? Will we choose each other again today? She says this isn't just a policy pitch, just a cultural truth worth talking about. This is the world we live in, where you have women like this who claim cultural truths and the moral authority to proclaim these cultural truths for everyone else. There's nothing truthful about this. There's no truth here. So, obviously it's open-ended and trying to get engagement on LinkedIn. Should marriage licenses come with an expiration date? I bit the bullet here and I added my 2 cents. But for me, like I said, I think this gives women yet another way to absolve themselves of responsibilities for the choices they make. So if you get married at 25, for example, and you wake up at, 32 and you're not feeling it. You're going through, life transition. Everyone, goes through life transitions. You're having your quarter, almost midlife crisis and you're like, I'm not sure about this. Marriage is on the rocks, stressed out about kids, yada, yada, yada. And you're just like, okay, well, the renewal is coming up and a year I can, or a couple months or whatever. Okay, I'll just walk away then. It gives women yet another out. And I find it silly too. Like, this woman is in the business of enabling divorce. And if you have a renewal on your marriage license, that would effectively annul your divorce or your marriage if you don't get it renewed. Like, the whole divorce business would collapse. So this is like kind of a suicidal business model. But anyways, I think women need to be held accountable. They don't need another mechanism to run away from their poor choices. And so, of course, I had one person agree with me. So that was nice. But, the comments are this, people love this idea. They think it's great. The ability that, this person wants the ability to walk away from a relationship without feeling someone will judge you, and it could allow more individuals to make the best decisions for themselves. No, because we live in this like narcissistic culture where you're supposed to like take care of yourself and prioritize yourself. And yeah, like you need to invest in yourself, sure. But just because, some pseudo therapist on Instagram is telling you something and making you believe something about your reality doesn't make it true. That doesn't make it real. And so, yeah, like I'm going to judge you if you walk away from a relationship because you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Like, that tells a lot about your character as a person. And it's not even just about, relationships. I think this is, the obvious example. But okay, like say you're an employer. Okay, say I'm an employer looking at this and there's a bunch of women here who are like, yeah, I would walk away from a relationship without feeling judged. I would do this. I would do that. Okay, as an employer, I'm looking at this and be like, what as a potential employee, what's the difference here? You wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You're like, oh, I don't like this job anymore. I don't like this company. I'm going to quit, like, especially if you're running a small company, right? Like, you're looking to invest in talent and you want to make sure that your investment pays off for your business. Like, you can't be hiring people who, 30 days into the job are just gonna be like, I've changed my mind. I don't want to work here anymore. I'm going to leave. As much as employers are doing a lot of harm to employees right now, and I've, talked about that in separate videos, like, it's also true that employees aren't helping themselves either. Like, we have a culture where because there's no commitment, there's no obligation, there's no duty, there's no responsibility. People just walk away. People just walk away from things. They don't take responsibility. They don't own up, and they're not like pushing themselves to work through like the hard issues that come up in life. They're not edifying their character. They're not trying to build themselves up. They're just like running away like children almost when things go wrong. It's like, oh, my husband pissed me off today. I'm just going to divorce him and run away and go start a new life somewhere. Like, that's what's happening. And so I think people need to own up to their choices. And, this person here, a family law attorney, she says, when people get a marriage license, how many of them understand they are entering into a legal contract with rights and responsibilities to love and cherish in sickness and in health, to be faithful until death do us part. These are intentions, not legal protections. Most people won't know the legal consequences of their marital license until they get divorced. And like, sure, okay. But at the same time, like, you're a part of a commitment is you're committing to someone. So, you don't say in sickness and in health, and then something happens, and suddenly your spouse wakes up and gets diagnosed with like Lou Gehrig's disease, or is in a car accident and suddenly becomes wheelchair bound. That doesn't give you the right to like just walk away from that, right? Like that is just so inhumane. You've agreed to something, and part of that, there are risks. There's risks in everything in life, right? And so part of that is, working within your marriage to anticipate risks, plan for risks, and take accountability and take responsibility. And yeah, like life's going to throw you curveballs. That's part of the human experience. If you don't want those curveballs, then you're not going to have a very rewarding experience, because you can't have the good unless you also have the bad. And if you don't understand that concept, read Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. If you haven't already, it will crystallize that for you. I just want to close with this. I have a novel solution to this problem that maybe these feminist women haven't considered, that could really solve a lot of these problems. I think if they don't want the commitment, if modern feminist girl boss women like this don't want commitment, they don't want responsibility, they don't want accountability, but they want legal protections, because that seems to be the thing that's coming up here, is they want legal protections when it comes to commitment and responsibility. And you're not always going to get legal protection with like the family unit, because the family unit exists outside of the law. Like the legal system exists mostly, at least initially, it was for like property protection, and right of like your personhood. So like criminal, protecting you against criminal activity and things like that. The state isn't supposed to be involved in like domestic matters and family matters. So I don't know that inviting more of the state into that and to mediate, conflict that arises in relationships, don't think that's really a good idea. So my solution, you let me know what you think about this. If these women can't stand the fact that marriage is a commitment, but they still want the legal protections of it, I would challenge them that instead of getting a marriage license, they set up a business partnership with their spouse. It's still, it's a formal way to recognize a union. So rather than being a husband and wife, legally speaking, you would be business partners. You could create an operating agreement where you could draft all sorts of stuff. And that, too, when you set up like an LLC, for example, you have to declare any like intellectual property you bring, pre-existing intellectual property that you bring into the business, so that in case the business does dissolve, like you can't, you wouldn't, the business partner or partners wouldn't be able to claim what already exists. So for example, like if I were to start a business tomorrow with some random people, I would put, YouTube and Substack and all my content library on when you fill out the forms to set up the business, because in the future, I wouldn't want those people coming back and claiming ownership of my like digital content, because that is something that pre-existed the creation of the business, if that makes sense. So there's already a mechanism in place when you're starting a business, it's kind of like a prenup, to lay out what you're bringing into it, all the pre-existing stuff. You create an operating agreement. So you say like who does what are the roles, what are the responsibilities, what are the expectations. So basically you could set up a contract where, okay, we want an egalitarian marriage. Well, here's what percentage you're going to pay, and what, percentage I'm going to pay, and what percentage of labor I'm going to provide, what percentage of labor you're going to provide, and divvy up tasks and roles and responsibilities right before you even, sign on the dotted line. Okay. And then you treat then both of you basically get equity in the outcome of your marriage. So I think maybe that's one of the things that's problematic for like modern women, is they don't see the benefit of marriage, because they have been told to look at the world through a hyper economic lens. So everything has to benefit them financially and economically, and that's why they need legal protection, and they're obsessed with that. They don't understand that there are things in life that are enriching and rewarding outside of the realm of economics and finances and money. And so if you are concerned about the legal protections and the finances and like kind of what's in it for me, like what's in this marriage for me, you set up a business, you allocate shares based on, however you want to dole them out. So if you want to do 50-50, you can do it 50-50. If you want to do it differently based on what you're bringing into the partnership, then you can do it differently. But basically, you're establishing equity in the business. So you're turning your marriage into a business, and you're creating equity. So you have skin in the game, and so that's the problem. Is women don't have any skin in the game, and because they also have the option to walk away at any point in time, there's no duty or obligation. But obviously, with a business, like that's different. Like you're putting skin in the game. You're putting an investment forward. You're creating something. There's reputational consequences if you fail. There's all sorts of stuff, right? And so yeah, like that's my theory. If you want a non-traditional modern marriage and you want legal protections, instead of making it easier to get a divorce, I think women should just set up business partnerships with their spouses. If you want egalitarian 50-50 everything, just set up a business partnership. And then if the business fails, there's a mechanism in place to divvy up the assets and figure that out. The question, of course, comes with children. Like, how are children affected by that? And, that maybe, like, if you don't see yourself having responsibility and commitment to another person in a family unit sense, you only see it as a partnership, maybe that's when you rethink starting family, to be honest. Because I think a lot of these women, like, notice in this entire thing, everyone is focused on, when the relationship is unhealthy or unhappy. Not a single element of this post or, some of the comments I scrolled through had anything to do with children. No one is thinking about the kids. Not a single person. They don't care. These women, when they go get divorced, they're not thinking about their kids and how happy their kids will be and how it will affect them. They're only thinking about themselves. It's highly narcissistic in nature. So I don't think we should have active renewals for marriage licenses, even though, you have renewals for, getting your driver's license and your car registration. I get that. No, a marriage is a commitment, and we need to restore obligation, duty, and responsibility to the family unit, and we need to restore the sanctity of the family unit itself in our society. It has to stop being this thing that can be deconstructed at whim, that anyone can just, wife wakes up on the wrong side of the bed and says, okay, kids, you're coming to live with me. I'm done with your dad. Take everything he owns. We need to stop accepting that and tolerating that as part of our culture. And that, I think, is incumbent too on, marriage itself. Like, we have to stop treating it like this big one-time party. Like, when you say I do, you're saying I do for life. And I think it needs to be revered and elevated to that level. We need to stop treating it like it's this party you throw, and then 3 years later, you divorce, and then a couple years later, you do it again. Like, we have to stop, like, treating it like this rinse, wash, repeat cycle. It's okay. Like, you're making a commitment with someone, and you got to work through the ups and downs. Like, you have to, overcome. Push young people to overcome. I think that's part of it. I would love to know what you think on this. Both my proposal of potentially having people set up businesses and business arrangements rather than going through marriage, if this is what they're obsessed about. But also, like, this whole idea of a marriage license. I'd be curious to know what you think about this. Definitely share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it as always. And I'll see you in the next video.